I hope you're all fed, watered, and that micturition, if necessary, has occurred. It's somehow singularly appropriate that our next speaker is Barcelona-based. And Benedetta Tagliabue will be giving an international architect's perspective on the subliminal influence of Mackintosh in her work in Scotland and elsewhere. I visited Port Vendres, where, as you know, Mackintosh lived out his last years twice. And on both occasions, I've travelled on day trips from Barcelona. And I've often wondered whether Charles Rennie Mackintosh might have made the trip in the opposite direction, via Port Boo, where, of course, the gauges of the railway line change in the transition from the French railway into the Spanish, which was created, that change in gauge was for military reasons, so you wouldn't be able to take your army by train into Spain, which seems eminently sensible. However, there is nothing to confirm my supposition that Mackintosh, curious soul that he was, might just have thought to go and have a wee look at the work of Gaudi. So that will just have to remain in the ether until we can find that definitive bit of evidence that will open up a whole new area of Mackintosh research. You heard it here first. In any case, Benedetta Tagliabue, as the name suggests, she is Italian, hailing originally from Milan. She studied architecture in Venice, and of course most of us will know the work of EMBT through the extraordinary achievement of the Scottish Parliament, which she completed after the sad death of Enric Morales, her husband and business partner. And she had worked with him on a number of notable projects, the Parc Diagonal del Mar in Barcelona, and she completed the Gas Natural HQ in Barcelona, an extraordinary fragmented glass building, and the Santa Caterina Market, which could not contrast more with the gas building, a building that's very contextual and very sinuous in its form. If you haven't visited, you must go to Barcelona and do the EMBT tour. She's also worked on major projects in Utrecht and Hamburg and maintains a very strong atelier in Barcelona, creating buildings of European quality and import. In a 2008 interview, she talked about the energy, passion and enthusiasm of Catalonia in the post-Franco era. And she also talked about her own personal thesis of the inextricable connection between architecture and its landscape context. And I think that is very clear from the way that the Scottish Parliament is uniquely set within its very special landscape at Holyrood in Edinburgh. So I think we have kindred spirits, Benedetta Tagliabue and Charles Rennie Mackintosh. Thank you.
So thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here again. Even if I don't know if I can speak about Charles Rennie Mackintosh, I'm not an expert, and probably how Neil was saying, our relation with Mackintosh is more about subliminal, about intuitions. And I think in a way it's nice, no? Eric was surprised also 10 years ago, in '99, to be proposed to have an exhibition called Mackintosh and Miralles, Architectural Sketches. And he was proposed to do that by the Hantarian Gallery. And in a way, he was very ashamed. He personally was a person who didn't like to be very apparent, but also he was accepting. No? So he liked very much to have this kind of photograph of the two, one next to the other. And he was also accepting that probably there would be some some similarities between this fantastic architect of Glasgow, who Eric admired very much. And we were coming here to visit the Glasgow School of Art with our friends, Andy, Angela, Fred. And he accepted that, and he accepted to do a kind of an intervention in the Hantarian Gallery, where his sketches were put together with the sketches of Charles Rennie Mackintosh, and where he wanted also to transform some of his sketches like this, which in principle they are kind of difficult to understand, into a kind of a construction, to make it very clear that this kind of lines coming from imagination, part seen, part imagined, then they can become very, very real. They can become something occupying the space, something really being still part of the imagination, but very concrete. So in a way, this little poster of the Hantarian Gallery that you have seen was transformed like this by Henrik himself. He after his exhibition, he came home, he made a gigantic photograph of the two eyes, and then frame it and put it in a very narrow place in our house at the end of a stair. So he didn't know, but a few months afterwards he died, and the photograph is still there, no? Very, very intense. And every time the cleaning lady was coming in front of it, she was making the cross because she was really scared. And in a way, I thought this was some of the humor that Enrique could put also in the most dramatic things, as for example his sudden death. No, he could foresee and make a kind of a joke. And these jokes about ghosts, I like very much this poster because it's reminding me the guest room into the Mackintosh School of Art. This was our first experience with Mackintosh in 1991 when we were invited to come here by the Mackintosh School of Art, and we were staying in the guest apartment, and of course the school was empty in the night, and our friends were leaving us at the door of the school, and they were saying bye bye. First they were telling us all the stories about ghosts and everything, and we were walking in the corridor with a kind of terror, which was a beautiful, beautiful part of this experiencing Scotland. So now that I had to do this presentation, and I was terrorized because I say, well, I don't know if I'm able to talk about Mackintosh. I went back and I found all the slides that Eric used to make a presentation in relation to this exhibition that he did in the Hantarian Galleries in 1999. So I find all of them, and by chance, they were all numbered. So I'm not sure, because I was not there, but I'm not sure that Eric gave the lecture exactly as I found it in the slides in the office, but I thought it was fantastic to find them, and now I will pass them to you, to you. We will go through them in order to see what Eric might have discovered in this, or might have said during the lecture that he had in the Hantarian Gallery 10 years ago. So, of course, he was working on the Scottish Parliament at that moment, but he was not conscious about how the Scottish Parliament would have ended and how it would have been. So I thought it would have been a nice thing to put together these slides that Eric chose in the occasion of the conference Mackintosh and Miralles, and put it together with some of the results in parallel of the Scottish Parliament. In a way, it's quite surprising also for me to see that all the slides that Eric put together in that situation are only about Mackintosh. There's nothing about our work, nothing about Rick himself. I don't know, maybe because it's just an incomplete lecture. I don't know. But I think also it is very much explaining Eric's attitude. He was very, very curious, and he was really looking at things with a kind of very, very particular eyes. I think, in a way, all these slides put together, to me, they are a kind of a teaching with no words, but you can learn so much about this sequence and about the choice that he did of what to present, how to make this presentation of the lecture Mackintosh and Miralles. And you see a lot of chairs, a lot of furniture, a lot of the Glaswegian girls, and well, I don't know, and the many interpretations you can give to all this series of chosen images. So I don't know, I think now we should try to start again and look at them with the possibility of making an interpretation and going forward with this sequence, with this analogies. Of course, this open door, I don't know if you say the door is ajar, I don't know, but it's a very, very impressive slide, no? That can say so many things. Also about the fact of having an architecture which is also in a way or in another. And this image is an image that Eric was keeping on his desk because he liked it very, very much. In fact, it is something that he was drawing very much. It's coming from Le Corbusier, the idea that the person drawing architecture or drawing things, projecting them for the world, is conscious about the hand which is drawing it, the body which is drawing it, and here it's even more. No, you are inside an eye, and you're conscious about your brain, about your vision, and about all the limitation which is making your hand drawing the world or understanding the world. And flowers. Flowers is something which is very present in Mackintosh, but here is put together with his writing. It's both about graphic, no? About how this hand can write with a graphic and express a thought, but also can express a thought by doing a different line of the reality, by drawing flowers. And of course, as Andy Macmillan reminds very many times, the presentation for the Scottish Parliament was very much about a reflection about the possibility of having a geometry similar to the one of flowers. So learning really about this geometry, which is not in a very determined way, but which is adapting to a topography. And also this was really very, very clear into Eric's hand drawings for the Parliament. There are thousands of them, which are really very much more similar to flowers than to architecture. And these color drawings start to become kind of other geometries, more similar still to flowers than to a type of geometrical architecture. And then this little by little becomes a real scheme, a real program, and the lines coming from this imitation of nature becomes a real architecture where things are functioning, their stairs are connecting, the spaces are working, and you have real dimensions. So this work was going on and on and on for the project of the Scottish Parliament, but I think it is very important to remember that with things like this you can do a lot of physical things. Then he was presenting these beautiful drawings of the School of Art. I think he was, I remember very well, we were once walking around the School of Art, and he was really photographing all the exterior of it with a great passion. And in a way, I think he was very conscious about the insertion of this wonderful building into the landscape, into the topography, into a difficult topographical situation. And of course, the Scottish Parliament was very much thought for its situation in the landscape. was thought as if the building itself was a landscape. And now that it's finished, I like this very much. I like it to see it as a landscape together with the rest of Carlton Hill or the rest of the Holyrood Palace next to it. And of course, it's a topography which is also kind of generous because it's open. It's really simulating as if the parliament was a very public building, which in fact is not. No, it tries to be, but a parliament is a building which usually it's very difficult to enter because of security. But also he was insisting on basements looking like caves, being very solid with vaults. And in fact, in the Scottish Parliament, one of the main ideas was to have a basement which was like a cave, which was like something coming out from the landscape itself, and which was really forming the base upon which the Parliament was standing. Then he put this strange image of a cemetery. I don't know why he introduced that, but I think it was a way of talking about the landscape of the city. Let's say you find a lot of landscape in the city, the one of the cemetery and the one of the streets. And those are the sketches which to me were very, very clear about a description of Edinburgh, the city down there, and then the lines arriving to the top of the hills of Arthur Seats in this sense. And so the relation to the city, from the city to the landscape in the Parliament is done in very many ways, and it was a very big attempt to do it through the wall which leads from the Royal Mile to the appearance of the Parliament. Eric did these sketches, and he was really designing a wall which was more like a kind of a rock he was saying it has to have a kind of a broken part at the eye level, and he was also expecting this to be a kind of a necessary place, something where you could find things very, very near your heart, things that you're really looking for, as if it was during the war a kind of notes telling about your people. And so we worked after Eric's death on this wall, which was not very determined. We worked together with the daughter of Alison and Peter Smithson, Soraya Smithson. She's a fantastic artist. And she introduced into the wall a landscape, the landscape coming from Eric's sketches, but also a lot of landscape coming from real Scotland, a lot of stones coming from Scotland, and engravings, letter engravings coming from the cemetery. And so little by little this wall became reality, and it has this possibility of reading on top, so it's an architecture with graphic, with letterings, and it has a possibility to get very near to the people, so you can touch it, you think that you are very much in relation with this piece, with this architectural piece, and this is very useful to introduce you to the Parliament, which until now it's invisible, and it will be visible immediately after. And then the looking at the plans and sections of the School of Art, and of course Eric was using a different geometry. We were working with different ways, but this idea, for example, of having protruded elements coming out from the massive buildings is very present in the Scottish Parliament. For example, here in the debating chamber corridor, which leads the politicians into the debating room, and here is from the exterior. And not only that, but also the MSP buildings, the MSP windows, the more private windows of the building are kind of bow windows protruding outside the building and creating a kind of a vibrant relationship with the mountain next to it. And also I think all these geometrical ideas about horizontal lines and vertical lines, I think this, the other side of the facade of the MSP is also playing with this both directions, putting them together and introducing the kind of obliquity which is leading the water in a kind of a more unconventional path. Then this is the inside of the School of Art, one of the insides, and of course the vault is an important part. Also the MSP building, the main idea was to make a kind of a vaulted ceiling because we wanted it to become a kind of a cell, and everything is crafted inside. Is all the furniture, the pieces, the walls with shelves. This is, I think, very much taking or in parallel with the work of Mackintosh. And then the skylights. This is the corridor we were walking through, going to our bedroom when we were sleeping into the School of Art. And there are more types of corridors, but what I think it's always fixed and incredible is this beautiful skylight coming from the top. And here I introduced the presence of sculpture with the Scottish Parliament. This was once when the building was exhibited into the Mies van der Rohe pavilion in Barcelona, or the skylight, which is also a very important part of the Scottish Parliament building. In fact, in all the basement, the light is coming from the top and is making a very special entry, let's say. And also in the very complex geometry of the Scottish Parliament, you have this kind of exterior places where the sky is appearing more like a skylight than the open sky. And of course, skylights is a very important part in the foyer, which was a bit which was just started by Eric. Eric couldn't develop it, but he had very clear that this had to be a kind of a very complex geometry in the garden, and we had to develop all this complex geometry from small models into what is now the reality of this kind of garden foyer, which was not like this at the beginning of the project. And the fantastic lecture theater. This is a really wonderful piece. Enrique gave a lecture there. I gave a lecture some years ago. And it's a very, very fantastic masterpiece. Of course, drawing the debating chamber, we had this piece in our mind. But of course, not only that, it was also this possibility of introducing a craft which belongs very much to the naval, to the ship construction, more than to stone construction. And since the beginning, we had very clear that the debating chamber would have a very strong idea of ship construction, so that the roof would be done with mainly a wooden structure, which would also give the idea that the debating chamber is not in a determined place in Scotland, but it's more in a kind of a ship situation, as if people is deciding in a kind of an open sea situation. And this, inside of Rick's slides, I also found this relationship with Alvar Aalto, but of course with Charles René Mackintosh and his capacity of introducing wood as a structure in a fantastic way. And all of this was maybe reduced during the first presentation of the competition for the Scottish Parliament, talking about the presence of those boats in the landscape. But the admiration of Eric for architects, not only for Mackintosh, also for Rietveld, was this capacity of making furniture which are like a piece of architecture, a complete piece of architecture in itself. So I think this looking of Eric to the chairs is really this imagining that the chair could be a complete piece where things can happen. And I think it's very nice that he put the sequence of the chair inhabited first by a kind of a ghost figure, and then you recognize that the ghost figure is the lady inhabiting it and being also the one who inhabits your life. No? This is Margaret MacDonald changing the chair. And inside the Scottish Parliament also we did this play with furniture, which in a way has a function also to fulfill the space with souls, with people, even if the Parliament is empty. Even when the Parliament is empty, you have these figures being there because the furniture itself have this kind of anthropomorphic functions. So this happens with the chairs, this happens with the desks, and this happens, of course, in the Mackintosh furniture, which is really so full with the faces of the people. So I like very much that in the selection of the photograph made by Eric, there was this mixing of furniture, decorative work, human figure, a world of imagination, flowers becoming spots, becoming again human figures, becoming materials. I think this is really a kind of a very, very fertile material where you can go inside and find space for imagination, not only for interpreting what is done, but also to do new things. So I think this, for example, this relation between this flowers becoming hard thorns, becoming then the legs of the chairs, and are really fantastic. You know, it's very difficult to put words into it, but in a way they are talking by themselves. No, they are giving you more than words can give, and all this relation between the ways of weaving the structure, weaving in a kind of two ways, horizontal and vertical, and then only vertical, and making of these different possibilities of weaving a kind of a complete world. But what is very beautiful is that Eric, in his lecture, was mixing so much all of this with the ladies, no? And you can kind of imagine that this is becoming the hair of some of these Glasgow ladies, or something, no? Some description of their presence in the life of Mackintosh. So I left all the images that Eric presented about the Glaswegian girls and this series of chairs, as if the chairs really can be interpreted as being human, as being persons of a theater play. And here is very clear that the theater play is about a mother and a child, or a father and a child, or a big brother and a big sister. And I think in this way also we designed most of the furniture of the Scottish Parliament, trying to have in mind also that this was used by the people, but also were kind of persons themselves. So in this way we went on drawing things sometimes after Eric's death, which were not really drawn, but we had in mind that probably it was correct. No, we were in the same line, and I think I don't know. We have this impression that we were kind of a symphony. We had a kind of a symphony with all this material, which was very clear not only to me but to many of the people who were in the studio at the time and were continuing immediately after Eric's disappearance. So this, some of the material, I found it into the slides of Eric, but he was not showing into the lecture because some of them are kind of very direct copies in a way. No? For example, this drawing and the drawing of for the carpets into the debating chamber. It's I think it's so similar that it's kind of Eric for sure didn't show it because he was ashamed. But in a But in a way, it's nice to know, no, that we are architect and we have to copy. But the idea is to copy in a good way. And of course, this was important also to have this idea that as architect, you are able to also to dedicate yourself to carpets or to textiles or to treat everything in the same way. And this is something that also made us, all of us now in the studio, a little kind of surprised and eerie. This is a drawing that we found in the Mackintosh book, and we had no idea about it. Eric actually photographed, but nobody of us knew it. And when we had to design the black and white corridor in the Scottish Parliament, it was 2003, very late. And we were not conscious about this relationship, but of course we were doing things which could be similar to that drawing that, that Mackintosh was doing. So the result is this, is much more simplified than what we would have loved to do, but anyway, it's giving this, black and white corridor that they were asking us. And so I think this is what we are interested about, no? This kind of imagination world which leaves the possibility to go on and to never to stop, let's say, and which also gives the possibility for our studio after Eric's death, which was in year 2000, to do new things, but not with the feeling of doing new things, but with the feeling that we are just going on, following something which was already quite clear, and that can give us the possibility now, for example, to design the Spanish pavilion for the Expo in Shanghai, which is maybe very different from what was the Scottish Parliament, but for sure is for us in the same line. So, thank you very much.